The ruthless Alpha King banished his pregnant mate, until their royal twin heirs awakened under the full moon. Alena Vos stood in the great hall of Blackthorn Castle with her hands shaking at her sides. The entire pack council watched her in silence. At the head of the room, Alpha King Damian Cross sat on a stone throne, his jaw tight, his eyes cold as winter ice. He would not even look at her. "You have betrayed this pack," he said, his voice echoing through the hall. "You met with our enemies. You gave them our secrets." "That is a lie," Alena said, her voice trembling but firm. "I have never betrayed you, Damian. I would never betray you." A tall man with slicked back hair stood near the throne, his lips curled into a small satisfied smile. His name was Victor Marsh, the pack's beta, and only he knew the truth. He had forged the letters. He had paid the witnesses. He had planted the evidence in Elena's chambers while she slept. Every word spoken against her was a lie he had built brick by brick, and now he watched his plan come to life. "I have proof," Victor said smoothly, stepping forward. Letters in her own hand, promising our territory to the Silver Hollow Pack. Witnesses who saw her meet with their scouts in the northern woods. Alena turned to him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Victor, how can you say this? You know it is not true." But Victor only shook his head sadly, as though he pitied her. "The evidence speaks for itself, my queen." Damian rose from his throne. The room fell utterly silent. Every wolf in that hall could feel the weight of his fury pressing down like a storm about to break. "I gave you everything," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "My trust. My pack. My name. And you repaid me with betrayal." "Damian, please," Alena begged, stepping toward him. "Look at me. You know my heart. You know I would never hurt you or this pack." For one moment, something flickered in his eyes. A memory perhaps of the night they first met beneath the stars, when he had promised to protect her always. But Victor cleared his throat, and the moment passed like smoke in the wind. "Take her to the border," Damian commanded, turning away from her. "She is no longer welcome in Blackthorn territory. She is no longer my mate." Gasps rippled through the hall. Even the guards seemed unsure, glancing at each other before stepping forward to escort her out. Elena's knees nearly buckled, but she forced herself to stand tall. "You will regret this," she whispered, so quietly that only Damian could hear. "Not because I wish you harm, but because you are turning away from the truth." Damian did not answer. He simply stared at the empty space where she had once stood beside him as his equal, his queen, his mate. Alena was placed in a plain carriage and driven to the edge of the territory, past the tall pine trees that marked the boundary of Blackthorn land. The guards said nothing to her during the journey. When the carriage finally stopped, one of them opened the door and gestured for her to step out into the cold morning air. "I am sorry, my queen," the young guard whispered, unable to meet her eyes. "None of us believe the accusations. But the Alpha's word is law." Alena nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She stepped down from the carriage and watched it turn back toward the castle, leaving her alone on the dirt road with nothing but a small bag of belongings and the clothes on her back. She placed a hand over her stomach, where a secret only she knew was growing. She had not yet told Damian. She had wanted to wait until the time felt right, until the shadows around the pack settled and she could share the news in peace. Now that chance was gone, stolen from her by lies and a broken trust. "I will protect you," she whispered to the tiny life inside her. "No matter what happens, I will protect you both." She walked for hours down the winding road, leaving the forest behind and entering unfamiliar territory where the trees thinned and the scent of pine gave way to dust and gravel. She did not know where she was going. She only knew she could not go back. By nightfall, she reached a small town she had never seen before, tucked between rolling hills far from any wolf pack's land. The street lights flickered on one by one as the sun disappeared behind the horizon. She found a small inn at the edge of town and used the last of her coin to rent a room for the night. Lying in the narrow bed, staring at the cracked ceiling above her, Alena allowed herself to cry for the first time since she had been banished. She cried for the life she had lost, for the mate who had turned his back on her, and for the children who would never know the golden halls of Blackthorn Castle. But somewhere beneath the grief, a quiet strength began to grow. She would not let this destroy her. She would build a new life, far from the pack that had cast her aside, and she would raise her children to be strong, no matter what truth or lies the future might bring. Back at Blackthorn Castle, Damien sat alone in his private chambers long after the council had dispersed. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting long shadows across the stone walls. He should have felt triumphant, having removed the threat to his pack. Instead, he felt an emptiness he could not explain. He walked to the window and looked out over the moonlit forest, the same forest where he had first caught Elena's scent years ago and known instantly that she was his mate. He remembered the way she had laughed when he clumsily tried to court her, the way she had challenged him when he grew too proud, the way she had stood beside him through every hardship since the day they bonded. A knock came at his door. Victor entered without waiting for permission, a satisfied look still lingering on his face. "The pack is safe now, my king," Victor said. "The traitor has been dealt with." Damien did not turn from the window. "Leave me, Victor." Victor hesitated, sensing something unusual in his alpha's tone, but he bowed his head and withdrew, closing the door softly behind him. Alone once more, Damien pressed his palm against the cold glass of the window. Somewhere out there, beyond the borders of his territory, the wolf who held half of his soul was walking away from him forever. He told himself it was justice. He told himself it was necessary. But deep in his chest, where the mate bond used to hum with warmth, there was now only a hollow, aching silence. He did not yet know that Elena carried his children. He did not yet know that Victor's letters were forgeries, crafted with careful precision to destroy the one person capable of seeing through his ambitions. He only knew that something inside him felt broken, and no victory could fill the void she left behind. Weeks passed, then months. The pack continued as it always had, following the orders of its alpha king. But subtle changes began to appear, changes so small that only the oldest wolves seemed to notice. The forest around Blackthorn territory grew quieter. The hunts became less successful. A strange unease settled over the pack like a fog that would not lift. Damien noticed it too, though he refused to speak of it. He told himself it was simply the changing of the seasons, nothing more. But late at night, when he lay awake in his enormous bed, the silence beside him felt heavier than it ever had before. Meanwhile, far away in the small town where Elena had found refuge, life continued in its own quiet rhythm. She found work at a local bakery, kneading dough and arranging pastries behind a warm counter that smelled of cinnamon and fresh bread. The owner, a kind older woman named Margaret, never asked too many questions, sensing that her new employee carried a sadness she did not wish to share. Elena's stomach grew rounder with each passing week, and she found herself placing her hands over it often, speaking softly to the children within. She did not know yet that she carried twins, a secret even more remarkable than she imagined, one that would shape the destiny of an entire pack in ways no one could foresee. At night, she would sit by her window and look up at the moon, wondering if Damien ever thought of her, wondering if he had discovered the truth behind Victor's lies. Some nights, anger burned through her, hot and sharp. Other nights, she only felt a quiet sorrow, mourning the mate bond that had once made her feel whole. But always, she reminded herself of her promise. Whatever pain she carried, whatever uncertainty lay ahead, she would raise her children with love and strength. She would teach them who they were, even if they could never claim the birthright that had been stolen from them. The moon outside her window seemed to glow brighter than night, as though it too were watching over the secret growing within her, waiting patiently for the day when the truth would finally come to light. 5 years slipped by like water through open fingers. In the small town of Ashford Hollow, Elena Voss had built a quiet life for herself and her 2 children. Her twins, a boy named Caleb and a girl named Nora, grew up chasing each other through the backyard, their laughter filling the little house Elena had worked so hard to afford. From the moment they could walk, Elena noticed something different about her children. Caleb had an unusual strength for his age, once bending the metal frame of his bicycle without meaning to. Nora had sharp senses, hearing conversations from rooms away and smelling rain long before the clouds appeared in the sky. Elena watched them carefully, her heart caught between pride and fear. "Mama, why do my eyes glow sometimes?" Nora asked one evening, staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Her eyes had flashed gold for just a moment before returning to their normal brown. Alena knelt beside her daughter, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You are special, my love. Both you and your brother. But we must keep that specialness a secret for now, just between us." "Why?" Nora asked, her small face full of innocent curiosity. "Because the world does not always understand special things," Alena said gently. "One day, when you are older, I will explain everything. For now, I need you to trust me." Nora nodded, though the question lingered in her young mind. Alena had grown skilled at answering just enough to satisfy her children's curiosity without revealing the full truth. She taught them small exercises to control their instincts, breathing techniques to calm sudden bursts of strength, and quiet words to soothe their heightened senses when the world grew too loud. Margaret, the bakery owner, had become like family over the years. She often watched the twins while Alena worked extra shifts, and though she never asked about their father, she sometimes noticed the flicker of sadness that crossed Elena's face when the twins mentioned wanting a daddy like their friends had. "You carry more than most people could bear," Margaret told her one afternoon as they cleaned the bakery counters together. "But you have done a wonderful job raising those two." "Some days I feel like I am barely holding everything together," Alena admitted. "That is what strength looks like," Margaret said with a warm smile. "Not the absence of struggle, but carrying it anyway." Alena treasured these small moments of comfort, for they reminded her that she was not entirely alone in the world, even without her mate by her side. Yet no matter how settled her life became, a part of her remained tethered to Blackthorn territory, to the park she had once called home, and to the mate bond that refused to fully fade despite everything that had happened. Meanwhile, back in Blackthorn Castle, Alpha King Damian Cross ruled over a pack that was slowly losing its strength. The forest that once teemed with game had grown strangely quiet. Hunting parties returned with less each season, and the wolves whispered among themselves that something was deeply wrong with their territory. Damian had grown harder over the years, his once commanding presence now edged with a weariness that even his closest advisors noticed. He rarely smiled. He rarely rested. He threw himself into pack matters as though burying himself in duty could somehow fill the emptiness that had settled inside him since the night he banished his mate. Victor Marsh had risen even further in influence, having positioned himself as Damian's most trusted advisor. He offered counsel on every decision, subtly steering the pack in directions that benefited his own ambitions. Yet even Victor could not explain why the pack's strength continued to weaken with each passing year. "The elders speak of an old legend," said Grandmother Ivy, the pack's oldest and wisest healer, during a private meeting with Damian one evening. "They say that when a true alpha banishes his rightful mate without just cause, the bond between the pack and the land begins to fracture." "That is superstition," Damian said sharply, though something in his chest tightened at her words. "Perhaps," Ivy replied calmly, her pale eyes studying him carefully. "But tell me, my king, has the forest ever been this quiet before? Has the pack ever felt this weak?" Damian said nothing, staring into the fire that crackled in the heart of his private chambers. He had asked himself the same question countless times, late at night when sleep would not come and the silence beside him in his enormous bed felt unbearably heavy. "I have heard whispers," Ivy continued gently, "that the evidence against Alena Voss may not have been what it seemed." Damian's head snapped up, his eyes locking onto hers with sudden intensity. "What do you mean?" "I mean only what I have heard," Ivy said carefully. "Rumors among the older wolves, nothing more. But rumors sometimes carry seeds of truth, my king. Perhaps it would be wise to look into the matter more closely, before more time passes." That night, Damian could not sleep. He paced his chambers for hours, Ivy's words echoing in his mind alongside memories of Elena's tearful pleas the day he had cast her out. He remembered the way she had looked at him, not with anger, but with a heartbreak so deep it had haunted his dreams ever since. He decided, in the quiet hours before dawn, that he would investigate the matter himself. If Alena had truly been innocent, he owed her the truth, even if it came far too late to undo the damage already done. Over the following weeks, Damian quietly gathered information, speaking with guards who had been present the night of Elena's banishment, questioning the witnesses whose testimonies had condemned her. One by one, cracks began to appear in the story that had once seemed so solid. A guard named Peter Hale, nervous and hesitant, finally admitted the truth after Damian pressed him privately. "My king, I never actually saw the Queen meeting with Silver Hollow Scouts. I only reported what Victor told me to say. He promised me a promotion if I cooperated." Damian's blood ran cold. "Victor told you to lie?" Peter nodded, his eyes downcast with shame. "I am sorry, my king. I did not know the full consequences of what I was doing." Piece by piece, the truth began to unravel before Damian's eyes. The letters, he soon discovered, had been written in a hand carefully disguised to resemble Elena's, but a scholar he consulted in secret confirmed subtle differences that proved they were forgeries. The witnesses who claimed to have seen her meeting with enemy scouts had all been quietly paid or threatened by Victor's associates. Rage began to build inside Damian, a fury unlike anything he had felt before. He had banished his own mate, the mother of children he did not even know existed, based on lies crafted by a wolf he had trusted completely. Every day that passed without her by his side had been stolen from them both by Victor's ambition. Yet even as his anger grew, so did his desperation to find her. He needed to know if she was safe. He needed to know if she could ever forgive him. And though he did not yet know it, he needed to meet the children who carried his blood, children who were growing more powerful with each passing full moon, drawing ever closer to an awakening that would change everything. Back in Ashford Hollow, the twins had just celebrated their 5th birthday, and strange occurrences had begun happening more frequently. Caleb woke one night from a vivid dream of a great stone castle surrounded by tall pine trees, a place he had never seen yet somehow recognized instantly. Nora began humming a melody she had never been taught, a lullaby that Elena recognized with a startled gasp as one sung only within the walls of Blackthorn Castle. "Mama, where did I learn that song?" Nora asked one morning, humming the tune again as she ate her breakfast. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she set down the plate she was holding. "It is an old song," she said carefully. "One I used to sing when you were very small." But she knew, deep in her heart, that this was not the whole truth. The bond between her children and their heritage was growing stronger, awakening slowly despite the distance that separated them from Blackthorn territory. She had hoped to shield them from this world for a few more years, but she began to sense that time was running out. That same night, under a bright and swollen moon, Elena stood outside in the backyard long after the twins had gone to bed, staring up at the sky with a heavy heart. The moon seemed to pulse with an energy she had not felt since her banishment, a call that stirred something deep and ancient within her blood. She placed a hand over her heart, feeling the faint echo of the mate bond that still connected her to Damian, weaker now after years of separation, but never fully broken. Somewhere out there, she wondered if he felt it too, this strange pull growing stronger as the full moon approached its peak. She did not know that in Blackthorn Castle, Damian stood at his own window that very same night, staring up at the same moon, haunted by the truth he had uncovered and the desperate need to find the family he did not yet know he had lost. The threads of fate, long stretched and strained, were slowly beginning to pull taut once more, drawing 2 broken hearts and 2 remarkable children toward a reunion that would awaken powers no one could have predicted. Damian stood in the center of the great hall, his voice thundering with a fury the pack had rarely witnessed. Victor Marsh stood before him, flanked by 2 guards, his face pale as the truth closed in around him like a tightening noose. "You forged the letters," Damian said, each word sharp as a blade. "You paid the witnesses. You destroyed my family with your lies." "My king, I only wanted to protect the pack," Victor stammered, though the confidence that once defined him had crumbled entirely. "Elena was becoming too influential among the elders. I feared she would weaken your authority. So you decided to weaken mine instead," Damian growled, stepping closer. "You took my mate from me. You took my children from me before I even knew they existed. And you let this pack suffer for 5 years while you built your own power in the shadows." Gasps rippled through the gathered wolves. Grandmother Ivy stood near the front of the crowd, her expression unreadable but her eyes sharp with quiet vindication. She had suspected for years that something was deeply wrong, and now the truth stood exposed before the entire pack. "Take him to the holding chambers," Damian commanded, his voice cold as stone. "He will face judgment for his crimes against this pack and against my family." As the guards dragged Victor away, his protest echoing down the corridor, Damian turned to address the stunned assembly. I made a grave mistake 5 years ago. I banished an innocent wolf, my own mate, based on lies I should have investigated more carefully. That mistake has cost this pack dearly, and it has cost me the years I should have spent with my family. He paused, gathering his resolve before continuing. I intend to find Alena Voss and make right what I have wrong, whatever it takes. Until then, the pack will be governed by the Council of Elders, with Grandmother Ivy at its head. The hall fell into stunned silence as their Alpha King, known throughout the territory for his unyielding pride, admitted his failure before the entire pack. Yet beneath the shock, many wolves felt something shift in the air, as though a heavy weight long pressing upon the territory had begun, ever so slightly, to lift. Damien spent the following days preparing for his journey. He gathered what little information he could about where Alena might have gone after her banishment, questioning old contacts and searching through records of the towns nearest their territory's borders. It was slow, frustrating work, made harder by the 5 years that had passed since she disappeared. Finally, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. An elderly trader who traveled frequently between towns recalled seeing a woman matching Elena's description years earlier, settling in a small town called Ashford Hollow, several days' journey from Blackthorn territory. She kept to herself mostly, the trader recalled, scratching his grey beard thoughtfully. Worked at a bakery, if I remember rightly. Had a gentle way about her, though there was always a sadness in her eyes. Damien's heart pounded at the mention of Ashford Hollow. It was a name he had never heard before, tucked away from the usual roads traveled by wolves, which explained why she had remained hidden for so long. He thanked the trader generously and immediately began preparing to depart, unable to wait even one more day now that he had a real lead to follow. Meanwhile, in Ashford Hollow, life had grown increasingly strange for Alena and her children. The twins' abilities continued to intensify as the days passed, and Alena found it harder and harder to explain away the unusual occurrences that seemed to follow them wherever they went. One afternoon, while playing in the schoolyard, Caleb accidentally caught a falling swing set piece that had broken loose, holding its considerable weight with ease despite being only 5 years old. His classmates stared in stunned silence, and though Caleb quickly set the metal piece down, whispers had already begun to spread among the other children and, eventually, their parents. That evening, Alena received a concerned phone call from the school. "We just want to understand what happened," the teacher said carefully. Some of the children seemed frightened by what they saw. Alena reassured the teacher as best she could, offering vague explanations about a surge of adrenaline, though she knew such an excuse would only hold for so long. After hanging up the phone, she sat at her kitchen table with her head in her hands, feeling the walls of her careful secret slowly beginning to close in. "Mama, are you upset with me?" Caleb asked quietly, standing in the doorway with his small shoulders slumped. Alena looked up, her heart aching at the worry etched across her son's young face. "No, sweetheart, I am not upset with you. I know you did not mean for anyone to see. Why do I have to hide what I can do?" Caleb asked, his voice small but earnest. "Nora hides things too. We just want to be normal like the other kids." Alena knelt down and pulled her son into a gentle embrace. "You are not meant to be like the other kids, my love. You are meant for something greater, something I have been trying to protect you from until you were old enough to understand." "Understand what?" Nora asked, appearing beside her brother with the same curious expression she always wore when secrets lingered in the air. Alena took a deep breath, realizing the moment she had long dreaded and long anticipated was finally arriving. She guided both children to the small living room couch and sat across from them, her hands folded tightly in her lap as she searched for the right words. "Many years ago, before either of you were born, I lived in a very different world," she began slowly. "A world of wolves who could transform between human and animal forms, ruled by powerful families who protected their territories and their people." The twins listened with wide eyes, utterly captivated by their mother's words. Alena continued, explaining as gently as she could the truth of their heritage, the pack she once belonged to, the mate she had loved and lost through cruel deception, and the reason she had fled to Ashford Hollow to raise them in safety and secrecy. "Are we wolves too?" Nora asked in a hushed whisper, her golden eyes flickering briefly with wonder. "You carry that heritage within you," Alena confirmed. "As you grow older, especially as the full moon approaches, your abilities will continue to strengthen." That is why I have taught you to control your instincts, to stay calm even when your senses feel overwhelming. Is our father still there? Caleb asked, his young voice carrying a mixture of hope and hesitation. In that place you came from? Elena's throat tightened at the question she had feared for years. Yes, she said softly. Your father is still there. He rules that territory as its Alpha King. Why did we never meet him? Nora asked, her small brow furrowed with confusion and a flicker of hurt. Elena took both her children's hands in hers, holding them tightly as she searched for words gentle enough to carry such painful truth. There was a terrible misunderstanding, my loves. Someone told lies about me, and your father believed them. He sent me away before I even knew I was carrying you both inside me. The twins sat in stunned silence, processing information far beyond what most children their age would ever need to comprehend. Yet there was a quiet strength in both of them, an inherited resilience that Elena recognized instantly, having seen the very same quality in their father years before. Does he know about us now? Caleb finally asked. I do not know, Elena admitted honestly. But I promise you both, whatever happens, whatever the future holds, I will always protect you and love you with everything I have. The twins embraced their mother tightly, and for a long moment, the three of them simply held each other in the quiet comfort of shared understanding, the truth finally spoken after years of careful secrecy. That night, as the twins slept peacefully in their shared room, Elena stood once more at her window, staring up at the moon that hung heavy and bright in the sky. She could feel it, an undeniable pull deep within her chest, stronger than she had felt in years. The mate bond, though weakened by distance and time, seemed to hum with a strange new energy, as though something significant was drawing near. She did not know that, at that very moment, Damien was less than a day's journey away, following the trail that would finally lead him to the family he had spent 5 years searching for. She did not know that Victor's betrayal had been fully exposed, that the pack now waited anxiously for their king's return, hopeful that the wrongs of the past might finally be righted. She only knew that something was shifting in the air around her, subtle yet unmistakable, like the quiet stillness before a storm breaks across the horizon. Whatever was coming, she sensed it would change everything, for better or for worse, and she found herself both frightened and strangely ready to face whatever truth the coming days would reveal. The following morning, Elena walked the twins to school as she always did, though her mind remained distracted with unease. She noticed Caleb sniffing the air curiously as they walked, his young face scrunched in concentration. What is it? She asked gently. I smell something new, Caleb said slowly. Something familiar, but I do not know why. Elena's heart skipped a beat, though she forced herself to remain calm for her children's sake. Probably just a new neighbor moving into town, she said, though a deep instinct within her whispered otherwise. As she walked back home alone after dropping the twins at school, Elena felt the strange pull in her chest intensify with every step. She quickened her pace, an inexplicable urgency driving her forward, though she could not explain even to herself exactly what she was rushing toward or away from. She reached her small house and stepped inside, closing the door behind her, yet the unease refused to settle. She busied herself with small tasks, trying to distract her racing thoughts, but her senses remained heightened, alert to every sound outside her window. Then, just past midday, a knock came at her door, gentle yet deliberate. Elena froze, her hand hovering over the doorknob as an overwhelming wave of familiar warmth flooded through her chest, a sensation she had not felt in over 5 long years. She opened the door slowly, and her breath caught entirely in her throat. Standing before her, taller and more weathered than she remembered, yet unmistakably himself, was Damien Cross, the mate who had once cast her aside, now standing at her doorstep with an expression of desperate hope and profound regret written plainly across his face. Elena, he whispered, his voice breaking with emotion he had suppressed for far too long. I have finally found you. Elena stood frozen in the doorway, her hand still gripping the wood as she stared at the man who had once torn her world apart. 1,000 emotions surged through her at once, anger, disbelief, and beneath it all, a lingering warmth she had never quite managed to extinguish. What are you doing here? She finally managed, her voice sharper than she intended. I know the truth now, Damien said quickly, stepping forward before catching himself and stopping at a respectful distance. Victor lied to me. He forged the letters, paid the witnesses. Everything used against you was false. Elena's chest tightened painfully. Part of her had always known this moment might come, yet hearing the words spoken aloud after 5 years of silence brought a fresh wave of pain rather than relief. It took you 5 years to figure that out. I should have questioned it from the very beginning, Damien admitted, his voice heavy with genuine remorse. I let my pride and my anger blind me to the truth. I have spent every day since regretting the moment I turned my back on you. You did more than turn your back, Elena said, her voice trembling with restrained emotion. You banished me. You humiliated me in front of the entire park. You sent me away without even a moment to defend myself properly. I know, Damien said quietly, his eyes reflecting genuine anguish. There are no words that can undo what I did to you. But I am here now, hoping for even the smallest chance to make things right. Before Elena could respond, the sound of footsteps approaching from the sidewalk caught both their attention. Caleb and Nora walked toward the house, having been dismissed early from school due to a minor building issue. They stopped abruptly upon seeing the unfamiliar man standing at their front door. Damien's breath caught entirely as his gaze fell upon the two children walking toward him. Even from a distance, he could see it, the unmistakable resemblance to himself in the boy's sharp jawline and the girl's piercing eyes that flickered with the faintest hint of gold beneath the afternoon sun. Mama, who is that? Nora asked cautiously, stopping a few steps behind her mother. Elena's heart pounded as she turned to face her children, aware of the weight of the moment pressing down upon all of them. She glanced back at Damien, whose expression had transformed entirely, filled now with a stunned wonder that erased the desperation from moments before. Caleb, Nora, Elena said softly, her voice steadying itself with quiet strength. This is your father. The twins stood in stunned silence, staring at the man they had only recently learned truly existed. Damien slowly knelt down to their level, his hands trembling slightly as he studied their faces with an overwhelming mixture of love and regret. I am so sorry it has taken this long to meet you both, he said, his voice thick with emotion he made no effort to hide. Caleb studied him carefully, his young face serious beyond his years. Mama said you sent her away. Damien's throat tightened at the directness of his son's words. I did, he admitted honestly. I made a terrible mistake, and I have spent years trying to correct it. I cannot undo the pain I caused, but I promise you both, I will spend the rest of my life trying to make things right. Nora studied him quietly for a long moment before stepping forward, her curiosity outweighing her caution. Do you have gold eyes too? She asked innocently. A small, surprised smile broke across Damien's face despite the gravity of the moment. Sometimes, when the moon calls to me, he answered gently. The simple exchange seemed to ease some of the tension hanging in the air, and Elena allowed herself a shaky breath, watching her children interact with their father for the very first time. Whatever anger and hurt still lingered within her, she could not deny the significance of this long overdue meeting. Perhaps we should continue this conversation inside, Elena said finally, gesturing toward the house. Damien nodded gratefully, following her and the twins inside, his heart aching with everything he had missed over the past 5 years. Over the following hours, Damien explained everything: Victor's betrayal, the park's mysterious weakening, grandmother Ivy's suspicions, and his desperate search to find Elena once the truth had finally come to light. Elena listened carefully, her emotions a complicated tangle of vindication and lingering hurt. The park has suffered greatly these past 5 years, Damien explained. Ivy believes it is connected to the wrongful banishment of a true mate. Whatever the reason, our territory has grown weaker with each passing season. And now you want us to return with you, Elena said, more statement than question, understanding the deeper purpose behind his sudden appearance. I want you to return because you belong there, Damien said carefully. Because our children belong there, and because I have never stopped loving you, even during the darkest days of my own foolish pride. Elena studied him for a long moment, searching his face for any trace of the deception that had once plagued their relationship. She found only sincerity, etched deeply into features that had aged with years of guilt and regret. I need time, she said finally. The children need time. You cannot simply appear after 5 years and expect everything to return to how it once was. I understand, Damien said, though disappointment flickered briefly across his face. Take whatever time you need. I am not asking you to forgive me immediately. I am only asking for the chance to prove that I have changed, that I am willing to earn back your trust, however long that may take. As the evening settled over Ashford Hollow, Damien reluctantly agreed to stay at a nearby inn rather than pressuring Elena for an immediate decision. Yet as the night deepened and the moon began its ascent into the star-scattered sky, an unexpected event began to unfold that would change everything. Caleb and Nora, restless with the overwhelming events of the day, slipped quietly out to the backyard while Elena spoke privately with Damien inside the house. The full moon hung directly overhead, larger and brighter than either twin had ever witnessed before, casting a strange silver glow across the entire yard. "Do you feel that?" Caleb whispered to his sister, his young voice filled with a mixture of excitement and unease. Nora nodded slowly, her golden eyes fixed upon the moon above them. "It feels like it is calling to us." Suddenly, a wave of energy pulsed through both children simultaneously, an overwhelming force unlike anything they had experienced during their previous small displays of strength. Their bodies began to glow with a faint silver light, mirroring the moon above them, as ancient power long dormant within their royal bloodline began to awaken fully for the very first time. Inside the house, Elena felt it instantly, a surge through the maid bond so powerful it nearly knocked her from her chair. Damien rose immediately, his instinct as an alpha screaming that something significant was happening. The children, Elena gasped, rushing toward the back door with Damien close behind her. They burst into the backyard just in time to witness an extraordinary sight. Caleb and Nora stood glowing beneath the full moon, their forms beginning to shift between human and something far more powerful, their golden eyes blazing with an intensity that surpassed even the strongest adult wolves within Damien's own pack. "What is happening to them?" Elena cried, fear and awe mingling within her voice. Damien stared in stunned amazement, recognizing immediately what he was witnessing. "They are awakening," he said, his voice hushed with reverence. Grandmother Ivy spoke of an ancient legend, twins born of true royal bloodlines possessing power beyond ordinary wolves, capable of restoring balance to a weakened pack. The twins' transformation intensified, their small forms momentarily shifting into young wolf shapes bathed entirely in silver light before gently returning to their human forms, breathing heavily but seemingly unharmed by the extraordinary display of power that had just occurred. "Mama," Nora said weakly, stumbling slightly before Elena rushed forward to steady her daughter. "I am here, my love," Elena said, holding both children close as Damien knelt beside them, his hand resting gently upon Caleb's shoulder. "You are safe," Damien said softly, emotion thick in his voice. "Both of you. And you are far more remarkable than either of you could possibly understand." As the extraordinary night settled into a fragile calm, Elena and Damien exchanged a long look over their children's heads, the weight of everything that had just occurred settling heavily between them. Whatever remained unresolved between them personally, one truth had become undeniably clear. Their children carried power capable of changing the fate of an entire pack, and that power was only just beginning to reveal itself. Yet even as relief washed over the small family gathered beneath the fading moonlight, a shadow lingered at the edge of the yard, hidden carefully within the darkness beyond the fence line. Marcus Vane, a loyal ally of the imprisoned Victor, watched the extraordinary display with calculating eyes, already forming plans to use this newfound knowledge against the very family he observed. The threat to Blackthorn's rightful heirs had not ended with Victor's imprisonment. It had only just begun to take a far more dangerous shape. Marcus Vane moved through the shadows of Ashford Hollow with practiced silence, his mind racing as he processed what he had just witnessed. The twins possessed power beyond anything he had anticipated, power that could easily crush the fragile network of loyalists still faithful to Victor's cause. If word of these children reached the wrong ears, the balance within Blackthorn territory could shift dramatically, and not in favor of those who wished to see the old order restored. He retreated to a small rented room on the outskirts of town, where he immediately began drafting a message to the remaining wolves still loyal to Victor's vision of pack leadership. These were wolves who had benefited from Victor's schemes over the years, positions of power and influence granted in exchange for loyalty and silence. They would not simply accept Damien's discovery of the truth without a fight. "The Alpha King has found his mate and his heirs," Marcus wrote carefully. "The children possess extraordinary power, power that threatens everything we have built. We must act quickly before they return to Blackthorn territory and solidify their claim. By morning, Marcus had gathered a small group of loyalists at a secluded location just outside Ashford Hollow, wolves who had quietly slipped away from Blackthorn territory once rumors of Victor's imprisonment had begun circulating. Their numbers were small, but their desperation made them dangerous, willing to take drastic measures to protect the power and privilege they feared losing. "We cannot allow them to return," one of the wolves argued, an older warrior named Garrett Finch who had served as one of Victor's most trusted enforcers. "If those children reach Blackthorn territory and their power is recognized by the full pack, our positions will be forfeit." "Agreed," Marcus said grimly. "We must strike before they leave this town, while they are vulnerable and unprepared." Meanwhile, unaware of the danger gathering at the edges of town, Alena and Damien spent the following days cautiously rebuilding the fragile threads of trust between them. The twins, having experienced their remarkable awakening, seemed to carry themselves with a newfound confidence, though Alena remained watchful, aware that such power came with great responsibility and potential danger. "We need to discuss returning to Blackthorn territory," Damien said one afternoon as they sat together in Elena's small kitchen, the twins playing quietly in the next room. "The pack needs its heirs, and Grandmother Ivy believes their presence could help restore the balance that has been lost. I am still not entirely certain I can trust this decision," Alena admitted honestly. "Returning means facing everything I fled from, the pack, the council, the memories of what happened there." "I understand your hesitation," Damien said gently. "But I promise you, things have changed. Victor's influence has been stripped away, and the pack now understands the truth of what happened. You would be returning not as an outcast, but as their rightful queen." Before Alena could respond further, a sudden commotion erupted outside the house. Damien's instincts fled immediately, his senses sharpening as he rose swiftly from his chair, positioning himself protectively between the door and where the children played. The front door burst open with tremendous force, and Marcus Vane stepped inside, flanked by 4 other wolves, their expressions cold and determined. Alena gasped, rushing instinctively toward the room where Caleb and Nora had been playing moments before. "Damien Cross," Marcus said coldly, "your heirs pose too great a risk to the balance of power within our territory. We cannot allow you to return to Blackthorn with them. You dare threaten my family in my presence." Damien growled, his body already beginning to shift, muscles tensing with barely restrained fury. "We have no choice," Marcus replied, his own form beginning to change as well. Victor's vision for the pack cannot be allowed to crumble because of 2 children born of a wrongfully restored bloodline. The confrontation erupted swiftly. Damien lunged toward the intruders, his powerful frame colliding with Garrett Finch as the other loyalist wolves spread out to surround the house. Alena rushed the children toward the back door, her heart pounding with fierce determination to protect them at any cost. "Mama, what is happening?" Nora cried, fear evident in her wide golden eyes. "We need to leave, now," Alena said urgently, guiding both children toward the yard where the confrontation had not yet spread. But Marcus, anticipating exactly this move, had positioned 2 of his wolves near the back exit as well. Alena froze, realizing they were surrounded. The twins pressed protectively behind her as she prepared to defend them with everything she had. Inside the house, the battle between Damien and the remaining loyalists intensified. Despite being outnumbered, Damien's rage and desperation to protect his family fueled a strength that overwhelmed his opponents one by one. Years of pent-up guilt and determination poured into every movement as he fought back against those who threatened to tear his newly reunited family apart once again. In the yard, Alena stood protectively before her children, her wolf form emerging despite years without practicing such transformations. The 2 wolves blocking their escape hesitated, sensing the fierce protective power radiating from the mother before them. Suddenly, Caleb stepped forward from behind his mother, his small form beginning to glow with the same silver light that had marked his awakening the previous night. "Leave my family alone," he said, his young voice carrying an unexpected authority that startled everyone present. The wolves blocking their path exchanged uncertain glances, clearly unnerved by the display of power radiating from such a young child. Nora joined her brother, her own golden eyes blazing with fierce determination as she stepped forward beside him. A surge of combined energy pulsed outward from both twins simultaneously, an overwhelming wave of power that sent both blocking wolves stumbling backward, momentarily stunned by the intensity of the display. Alena seized the opportunity, quickly ushering her children towards safety while the intruders remained disoriented. Inside the house, Damian had successfully subdued Garrett Finch and 2 other loyalists, leaving Marcus as the last remaining threat. The two wolves circled each other warily, years of built-up tension finally reaching its breaking point. "You cannot win this fight, Marcus," Damian said, his voice steady despite the exhaustion evident in his movements. "Your cause was built on lies from the very beginning." "Perhaps," Marcus admitted, breathing heavily. "But I will not go down without ensuring the true threat to our pack's stability is eliminated." Marcus lunged forward with surprising speed, but Damian anticipated the movement, sidestepping at the last moment and using Marcus's own momentum against him. The two wolves collided with tremendous force, but Damian's superior strength and unwavering determination to protect his family ultimately proved decisive. Within moments, Marcus lay defeated, subdued and unable to continue the fight. Damian rushed outside just as Alena and the children emerged from the confrontation in the yard, relief flooding through him at the sight of his family safe and unharmed. The remaining loyalist wolves, witnessing their leader's defeat, quickly fled into the surrounding forest, abandoning their futile attempt to prevent the family's return to Blackthorn territory. "Is everyone all right?" Damian asked urgently, rushing to embrace Alena and the twins. "We are safe," Alena said, though her voice trembled with the aftermath of adrenaline. "Thanks to you, and to them," she added, glancing proudly at her children who stood slightly exhausted but unharmed beside her. In the days that followed, Marcus and his remaining loyalists were taken into custody, their attempted attack serving as undeniable proof of the lingering threat still posed by those loyal to Victor's corrupted vision for the pack. Grandmother Ivy, informed swiftly of the incident, urged Damian to return to Blackthorn territory as quickly as possible, both to properly address the remaining threats and to allow the pack to witness the return of their rightful heirs. Alena, having witnessed firsthand her children's incredible display of protective power, finally found herself ready to make peace with returning to the world she had once fled. "We will come with you," she told Damian, watching as relief and gratitude washed over his features. "But this is not simply about forgiveness for what happened before. This is about building something new, together, for our children's sake." "I understand completely," Damian said earnestly. "I do not expect immediate forgiveness. I only ask for the opportunity to prove myself worthy of the family I nearly lost forever." The journey back to Blackthorn territory took several days, filled with quiet conversations and gradual rebuilding of trust between Alena and Damian. The twins, meanwhile, grew increasingly excited as they approached the territory their mother had once called home, eager to see the castle and forest they had only heard about in stories. Upon their arrival, the entire pack gathered to witness the historic return of their queen and the discovery of their rightful heirs. Grandmother Ivy stood at the forefront, her ancient eyes shining with quiet satisfaction as she watched the small family approach the castle steps. "The prophecy has come to pass," Ivy announced to the assembled pack. "True heirs, born of a rightful bond nearly destroyed by deception, now stand ready to restore the strength and balance our territory has long been missing." Damian addressed his pack with newfound humility, publicly acknowledging his past mistakes and pledging to spend the rest of his reign making amends for the pain his pride had once caused. The pack, witnessing both his sincere remorse and the undeniable power of the twins standing proudly beside their parents, welcomed the family back with overwhelming warmth and renewed hope for the future. In the weeks that followed, the forest surrounding Blackthorn territory began to flourish once again, the strange weakness that had plagued the pack for 5 long years gradually fading as the rightful bloodline settled back into its proper place. Hunts grew successful once more, and a renewed sense of unity spread throughout the pack, inspired by the story of resilience and redemption that had brought their queen and her remarkable children home. Alena and Damian continued to slowly rebuild their relationship, guided not by the demands of duty or bloodline, but by genuine effort and mutual respect earned through patience and understanding. Though scars from the past remained, both recognized that true strength came not from perfection, but from the willingness to learn, grow, and protect those most precious to them. Caleb and Nora grew into their extraordinary abilities under the careful guidance of their parents and the wisdom of Grandmother Ivy, understanding gradually the responsibility that accompanied their remarkable heritage. They would one day inherit leadership of Blackthorn territory, not through fear or ruthless authority, but through the same resilience, compassion, and strength that had defined their mother's journey and their father's path toward redemption. And so, beneath the watchful glow of the full moon that had once witnessed such heartbreak and betrayal, Blackthorn territory found itself transformed into a place of renewed hope, guided by a family whose bond, though tested by deception and separation, had ultimately proven stronger than the darkness that once threatened to tear it apart forever.